thought I was just making a card deck until I realized it was healing me and showing me how disconnected I was. Let's get into this video. I think for many of us that are watching this video, or I'm sure you can think of at least 5 people that you know that really are constantly disconnecting with our energy in a way that disregards our emotions. Like our emotions that are deep down inside. Usually the uncomfortable ones, right? Like if we're happy and stuff, we love to be all up in that shit, right? But when we start feeling kind of like melancholy or anxious or whatnot, a lot of us don't really explore why. I do feel like I'm talking to someone that has, though. And for a long time, you can relate to the old version of yourself that was just not having it, because you're always feeling. You were always that person that was, why are you so emotional and this and that, right? But that's because we're stuck in survival mode that disconnects us from our energy. And a lot of times, depending on your healing journey, right? Like you have this conditioning where it's like, oh, you're being too sensitive, or like people disregard, why are you a crybaby, XYZ, right? It's like we spend too much time surviving and hardly no time checking in with ourselves emotionally. You know what I mean? So this is partially why I started creating my card decks. Some years ago when I first started my entrepreneur path, I was experiencing a lot of exhaust. Now, some of it was because I was hustling and bustling in New York City, right? But some of it was because of how wound up I was inside emotionally, and I had no outlet to let that out other than what I used to do a lot of times, which was, and it's like, I'm sure there was other outlets that I did, but I'm making a point of the fact that I was disregarding my emotions, you know what I mean? Because I felt uncomfortable. So I did what I knew best. But one day, I wanted to dive deeper into that. And in hindsight, I was in the midst of my awakening, right? Awakening my spirit, connecting to these emotions that had to be seen, hands down. A lot of times it's like, oh, you're awakening to what, right? You're awakening to your soul path. That's what you're awakening to, okay? And some actually want that. They open the door and they get sucked down the rabbit hole, i.e. Alice in Wonderland. Or some just go through something and then one day they wake up and they're like, what the hell? Why does everything seem different? And you start exploring why. And for me, it was exploring why. And I didn't choose to do that. I just felt that something was wrong with me. And fast forward to my entrepreneurship, right? I was figuring out how to make money for myself because I definitely didn't like corporate, right? And then also fast forward more, I was being called to do something different. My first endeavor, my business endeavor had to do something with what I was passionate about, which was sneakers and clothing and that lifestyle. And then it went into more of a heart-centered space that was calling me to paint, calling me to be creative, but I was hiding behind other creatives. And it was almost like the universe was showing me why I needed to shine and needed to step up in my creativity. Because one, people didn't understand the type of creativity that I saw. And two, I was yearning for depth. And I met some people that had some depth, but I wanted to go deeper. So the cards kind of came about actually in my sneakerhead days. When someone gypped me off, kind of. They didn't like gyp me, they paid me for my services, but it was one of those moments where it was like, hey, do you want to come? We met on parallel type of accordance. Like, they knew that I was into sneakerhead stuff. They were doing sneakerhead stuff. And it was women too. They're like, oh, we appreciate women, blah, blah, blah. But they never really invited me. They didn't verbally invite me, and they didn't really like figuratively invite me until I was done with the project, right? And then they're like, hey, if you want to come through, this is what we have going on. So I'm like, okay, cool. I go there, and it was just like they were doing some like different events. It's like, why didn't you think to have me in the event to share the type of cards that you guys had, like share what I do, you know? They just either disregarded me wholeheartedly because they weren't thinking about me, or they knew what I was doing and they thought that, you know, I'd outshine them. Either way, it wasn't up my lane, but I know that there was something I can't even remember. I could just remember the feeling that made me go outside and like, how dare them? You know what I mean? It's something that they did. It's almost like when a person gives you something special and then all of a sudden someone tries to scribble your name out and put their name on it. It was like one of those moments. I really don't remember. But I just remember being like, oh, I don't like this. Like, this is way too many times that this is happening, you know? And I just knew that I felt like I was giving up. But my heart didn't want to give up. But I knew that I was also being led. Well, at the time I didn't know. But I was being led into something else, you know? Lo and behold, like years later, I started tapping into tarot. I started like messing with oracle cards and just understanding the depth of the esoteric value that it held. And I was just like, yes, right? So I was doing things like that, and each day I would learn how to understand the cards. I would watch people's readings, X, Y, Z, all that stuff, and I got caught up in that because not only that, like I was going through a huge understanding and upheaval around a deep, deep, deep soulmate that I was around. That's another story for another day. But I was learning, you know, how these cards speak with me. And I knew that I wanted to use those cards to help me understand my intuition more, help me trust myself more. One day I feel like I either had like a dream or a daydream, as I call it, where I saw me with all these cards. And I was sharing and showing people how to use them. And I spent years. I spent years trying to figure out how to package them, but the real thing was I was hiding behind my creativity. I was trying to perfect something that I didn't know how the style was going to be. I didn't feel that inspired, but I felt like it was on my heart, you know? For those that know. Because it's almost like sometimes you have a project that you really want to do, but it's like you don't quite know how you want to style it, express it in a certain way. And also, I was burnt the out. Like tarot, you know, tarot has all the symbolism and images and things like that. Like, that was always up my alley. I've always wanted to create art like that. But again, like, I just kind of didn't know what message I wanted to put across, like what type of cards were they going to be, XYZ. So I put it on the shelf and went deep into my healing, because there was a lot of stuff that was being called to me with ancestry and my family and things of that nature. So I had a lot of that going on. Plus I couldn't get a job. Plus I had so much on my plate, right? So the creativity was put aside. But I also always was brought to creating these type of rituals for myself, i.e. the cards, and sometimes other types of things that dealt with elements and astrology, all that stuff, right? So, for instance, right, my very first card deck, right, as you can see here, I knew that I wanted to express some way, shape, or form, and I did that. And for 2 years, I was on Instagram doing Monday Motivation. Then these cards here with the chakra affirmations, I was using affirmations to really help me balance my throat chakra, to really step into and embody who I desire to be and shift my mindset. And at the the time too, I noticed how I was unable to express a lot of the knowledge I knew about chakras. I was able to talk about it amongst people that knew a little bit about it or one on one, but every time I thought I was going to get on social media and talk about it, it was almost like, ah. Remember when Ariel from Little Mermaid tried to sing and her voice just got like, that's how it was almost. It was wild. But it was some deep trauma behind that. Okay. Another story for another day. But those got birthed, you know. Each moment where I healed a certain specific layer that was shedding off of me, subconsciously I was creating the cards for me. That helped my healing and helped me get into a routine of soul care, as I call now. The heart cue cards got redeveloped from my very first card deck because honestly, I spoke to an intellectual property lawyer, an IP lawyer, and they were saying something about me having to, something with the quotes, and a lot of them I got from IG. So it was kind of like, I was doing research and some of them I really couldn't find. So I was like, chuck that. And I wind up doing that and like reforming it in a way that was really about self-love. Because I noticed how I was doing it, but it still wasn't there. It still wasn't there. And then these cards came about because the Sovereign, it was like, okay, are you going to make like images on the cards? What are we doing here? And I remember that moment when I was just like, all this time I was discrediting that I was an artist. I don't like titles, I don't like labels, but we use them to describe certain things, right? The way I viewed an artist was basically like my dad, and I don't know, any one of these days I'll show his work, but his work is magnificent. I don't draw like him at all. I don't color like him, but he doesn't know how to paint. So, go figure. But I was like, I don't know. I kind of was like trying to meet where he was. I didn't see myself as that, and there's other artists in my family, like they draw so well. The way I draw is good, but it's not like them. So I was comparing myself and I was disregarding the fact that, hello, like there's all types of creative people, there's all types of artists, like come on, right? And so I just did that just because. And I remember I was learning about Lenormand cards and reminding myself how I don't really like how people relate to tarot cards as fortune telling. Just like I've heard people say, oh, I don't like astrology because people always try and do fortune telling. For me, I never use astrology for fortune telling. I was trying to figure out self-discovery, soul discovery. Who am I on a soul level? That's how I saw it. Like, what planets were aligned when I came out through this portal and understanding what energy I was holding. And that wasn't until I started learning more about astrology. Yeah, you can somewhat predict, just a little bit. Just like with cards, if you have that gift to sight, you can. But you don't always have to do it that way. And then I was attaching it to like that swindler vibe and scammer crap. I just all that. And that delayed the true project that I'm showing y'all now, that I have now, right? This so-called journey that I'm so proud. Like, I'm so proud to have this and have finished this because it came a long way. It took some years. It really took some years to create this. And guess what? Even through all that healing, this was like the crescendo of my healing journey. That felt just like, So, yeah, here we are. The artwork, the messages, the journaling, like it all became healing for me. And it was in hindsight, and it definitely is now. And one thing I can say that's different about the other cards versus these, it's allowed me to shed a lot of the things that I wanted to express, but I couldn't. And like this tool really ran deep for my healing. Not to mention, when I finished, it was like more energy, more collective energy right now, honestly, is shifting into new gifts and new timelines, all that stuff. But for me, it was like I was rediscovering an old gift, an old, type of gift that I had, but also possibly like a new gift. And I started embracing myself in a new way. And it was something to explore too. And now I look back, and all this time I've been trying to help other people with their gifts and with them holding space and all that stuff. The moment I decided to be selfish and put all of that energy into me, the card deck got finished. And the cards became a new way to hold space for myself. And one thing that I knew a few years ago that I was healing was through corporate, of using creativity in like this productivity way that was forcing and pushing and cranking things out. I knew how to do that actually very well, but that also was one of the sources of my burnout. You know what I mean? And it took me years to unravel that and to really complete that. And I feel that part of that healing, that specific wound around creativity and productivity, helped me with this for sure. Because sometimes self reflection isn't always about fixing, too. It's about listening to yourself, it's about stillness sometimes. It's about feeling how your body feels and what you're picking up in that present moment. Not self judgment, not what am I have to heal next, what do I have to write next, what do I have to do. Sometimes it's just being, right? And resting. I've been on a long, intense healing journey. I'm talking about it might be like 10 years, just going and searching and finding and buying, you know what I mean? And I've now embraced the softness that creativity comes when it comes to healing with, as well as reflection and slowing down. And I would love to share this with you. I'd love to know what self-reflection looks like for you nowadays. Let me know in the comments. And if you're curious about the cards, I'll leave the links below in the description as well. Again, stay tuned for more. I'll be talking a lot about how to use soul care tools, the soul care tools that I've used, and the ones that I've created. So join me on this journey. Matter of fact, this soul called journey. And vibe with me. Until next time, I'm outie. Peace.